The LA Kings bounce back and ruin the star-studded performance in Vegas.
And history is made in the Battle of Alberta.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg. We've got all that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
You wanted the madness of professional hockey back in your life? Well, boy, do we have the show for you here on Locked On NHL Game Night. I'm Stuart, a temporarily happy Boston Bruins fan in the hub of the universe. Alex Wiederspiel, a Rangers fan in almost heaven, bringing you all the action from tonight's action in the NHL. It's brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. We've got an absolutely downright crazy one in the desert. We've got a pretty crazy one ourselves up in the Battle of Alberta between Edmonton and Calgary. A lot of goals in Toronto and a big night from David Pastrnak in our nation's capital out in Washington, D.C. Let's go through all of it. Alex, we had to stay up late for this one. We had some madness on the West Coast, and specifically in this LA-Vegas game. You had actually texted me during the game and said, is it a must-win for a team in the second game of the season? But it kind of felt like if you're the Kings, you couldn't let this one slip away.
No, it really did not. And kudos to Quentin Byfield and Brandt Clarke and to the youth movement in LA, apparently, for now at least. That was something that Jim Hiller was not thrilled about going to in the playoffs. And to be honest with you, a lot of this game looked a lot like, and a lot of these first, I would say, 5 periods for the Kings looked a lot like what we saw in the playoffs in the first round, particularly in the latter half where the Kings completely collapsed against Edmonton. And then in the third period and overtime tonight, the youth movement took over. Byfield, he is potentially on another level entirely. If he can find that level with some consistency, there is going to be some serious debate in the Pacific Division about who the guys behind McDavid and Draisaitl are.
He looked every bit of the part tonight. And it was 2 times in this game that the Kings had a 2-goal lead. They jump all over Vegas. It's 2-0 in the first period. Vegas gets one back. It's to 3-1 midway through the second. How about this for a story? Jeff Malott gets credited with the goal well after the fact in the second intermission. Undrafted 29-year-old getting his first career NHL goal. But then immediately afterwards, Alex Turcotte, who got an assist on that goal, boarding penalty, 5-minute major, sends Vegas to the power play. They get about 3 minutes after a roughing call evens it out for the first 2 of it. And that's where the comeback starts. Pavel Dorofeyev gets his second of the night. Then on a 5-on-3, gets his third of the night before we're even done in the second period. The first hat trick of the year goes to Pavel Dorofeyev. 44 seconds left in the second. All of a sudden, we get a tie game. We see the same play twice. Eichel to Stone across the Dorofeyev. That would not be the last time we heard from Jack Eichel into this game. 5 minutes into the third, the guy making his debut in Sin City, Mitch Marner, lights it up. Unbelievable saucer pass to Barbashev, to Eichel, back to Barbashev. That made it 5-3 because I skipped a goal. 5 minutes into the third, Marner tees up a perfect cross-ice one-timer. Jack Eichel, forgive him if he's slow on this night. His pockets are full of more money. How about $13.5 million per year in the 8-year extension? Marner to Eichel, a $204 million goal, and Vegas. It's all Vegas from the end of the second period on. But then you say it, the youth movement comes in. It's first off, it's Trevor Moore shorthanded breakaway goal, makes it 5-4, and then Byfield to Brandt Clarke. It's 5-5. This thing goes to overtime. It goes to the shootout, and the Kings spoil Mitch Marner's debut 6-5 in the shootout. Let's hear from our good friend and Locked On LA Kings host, Eddie Garcia, the one and only, about how his team had it all the way.
The LA Kings show some heart in Vegas. I'm Eddie Garcia, host of Locked On LA Kings. Kings opened up the season with back-to-back games on back-to-back nights against two of the best teams in the NHL, Colorado and Las Vegas. After falling in their home opener to the Abs, the Kings get a big come-from-behind road win against the Golden Knights, 5-4 in a shootout and a very entertaining game. Kings led 3-1, then allowed 4 unanswered goals, fall behind 5-3, but scored the final 2 goals of regulation, a shorthanded goal by Trevor Moore and a goal by defenseman Brandt Clarke. That was in a span of about 2.5 minutes in the third to tie it up. They force overtime. It goes to a shootout. Adrian Kempe and Trevor Moore scoring, while new Kings backup goalie Anton Forsberg stopped Mitch Marner to finish off the win, a much-needed win for LA, as they'll now be on the road for 7 more games this month, 5 of them against teams that made the playoffs last season. Big road win for the LA Kings. For a complete wrap-up on that win, check out the latest episode of Locked On LA Kings.
Thank you to Eddie and Alex. We don't like to highlight the losers too much in this show unless it's the Leafs, in which case then we do like to do that quite a bit. And we won't take away, we've obviously talked about the Kings and their youth movement, but that first line for Vegas is scary, and it looked scary tonight.
What was funny was I think I texted you after the first period and said something like Marner invisible, and then immediately he just completely turned it on. And that's one of the harder things you hear about pretty regularly with these guys, that when they're, even if it's their choice, right, when they're moving across the continent and relocating their life and changing things up for their family, it can be a little tough. And sometimes that can take a period or a game or a month of games. And sometimes it can take more than a season. And sometimes you never get comfortable. Well, Mitch Marner was comfortable in about 20 minutes. So it didn't look great in the first, but boy, he was not invisible after that.
It feels like Barbashev, man, just keep your stick on the ice. Mitch Marner and Jack Eichel. How about playing on a line with those guys? And obviously Pavel Dorofeyev being on the second line gets the hat trick in this game, the identical 2 goals on the power play. Still one of the great snipers in the league. Not much of an offensive creator, but man, can he put the puck in the net. And we said it, man, there was just a wild night on the West Coast. This was just one of them. Okay, we had legitimate history going on up north of the border in the Battle of Alberta, a historic comeback to shock the Western Conference champions of the last 2 years. Let's break it down next on Locked On NHL Game Night. But first, a word from our sponsor over at FanDuel. As you guys know, NFL season is here. It is in full swing, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love that FanDuel just gives me so many ways to play. I build parlays, I do player props, even follow the lines during the games because I feel like I got a hunch. FanDuel helps me turn that hunch into money. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Once more, that is FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get yourself started. Let's take it north of the border, shall we? Alex Wiederspiel here on Locked On NHL Game Night. Battle of Alberta, Edmonton hosting Calgary. Obviously, Oilers still without Zach Hyman for looking to get to the Stanley Cup final for the 3rd year in a row. This Flames team's really interesting. I don't know that they really got better in this offseason as a team that just missed the playoffs last year and really was only in the picture because of Dustin Wolf, who really turned it on in the second half of this game. But speaking of the second half of this game, Alex, this looked like Edmonton was in complete control 30 minutes in and up 3-0.
I had a tweet that looked really, really. Do we still call them tweets? I had a tweet.
We'll allow it. I'll allow
it.
Yeah.
I had a tweet that looked really, really good for the first 30 minutes of this game, and a tweet that looked real dumb in the final 30 minutes of this game. As I compared, and apologies to you, the Boston fan, but I basically said Calgary feels like the Boston of the West, except worse. Okay?
Unfortunately, that is fair. Unfortunately,
yeah. Like the difference is they don't really have a Pastrnak, right? Like they don't have that one elite forward, but you look at the way that they're built around the goaltending, and there are all sorts of concerns about the depth down the lineup. But they have a lot of good NHL players. You just think, like, are they good enough? And Dustin Wolf has this magic ability to erase some of those problems. They stuck with it. And he even mentioned, he said he wasn't super comfortable the first half of that game. Edmonton created a bunch of chaos in that space, and they outshot Calgary, I think, through the first 30 minutes. I'd have to go back and double check. I believe it was 18-8 when Calgary got their first goal of the game, which, if you look at the way Calgary scored those goals, I know you're going to go over the highlights here in just a moment. Look at the way Calgary scored those goals. Very, very weird moments. They were very hockey moments to get back into this game.
We call that gritty. Okay, a gritty way to get it's weird. They got some weird bounces. They maybe even had some controversy in there, but it was a gritty comeback by these Flames. It was all Edmonton for the first half of this game. McDavid to Draisaitl on the power play, 1-0. Stop me if you've heard that one before. Then, about midway through the second, another power play goal from Leon Draisaitl, but it's on this sick backhand pass from David Pastrnak, who gets his first career point in the NHL, but maybe more importantly in the annals of NHL history, it is the 400th goal for Leon Draisaitl. That made it 3-0. Leon keeps the puck, by the way. If you're interested in that, I think he should give it to Pastrnak. First career point. Leon's going to get 500 goals. He's going to get 600 goals, but maybe that's just my old man opinion. A couple minutes later, this is where it gets weird. Okay, 3-0 Edmonton. They're in complete cruise control. Speaking of another guy who's making his NHL debut, Matvei Gridin, spin pass to the middle of the ice. Big problem, though. Nobody is there for the Calgary Flames. There's just one guy there. It's Noah Philp, the defenseman for Edmonton. It goes off his shin, right through Stu Skinner's 5-hole and into the net. First career goal, obviously, for Gridden. It's 3-1. And then 2 minutes later, Connor Zary, here's where the controversy comes into play. Bats down a puck in the air and into the net, goes to review. It looks like it's just a bit too high. And Louis DeBrusque on the broadcast for Sportsnet is saying it. He's like, that's just a bit too high. That's going to be called off. No, sir. It actually holds up. It's 3-2. All of a sudden, there's so much life. And you said it. You said it, Alex. You're like, that's a weird one for Stuart Skinner. How's he going to respond here? The narrator says, not very well. Beginning of the third period, this is just straight out of central casting for Stu Skinner. Calgary throws one in. It's actually Zary that throws one into the zone. One hop to Skinner. He should be just collecting it and then playing it. Instead, it bounces off him, and it's just sitting there, like literally right in front of him, right in front of his pads.
NHL 25 stuff, by the way. And it's very NHL 25.
He thinks Bouchard's going to take it. He doesn't. And so just sitting there is Blake Coleman, Plano, Texas's own. Blake Coleman, who's just like, okay, I'll take that. Bats it into the net. 3-3, completely out of nothing. And then it stays that way for a while. Late power play for Edmonton goes by the wayside. They get a late power play in overtime, which was a brutal call on Uyghur there. That was just not a good call. And Edmonton gets the power play there. They fail to convert. Puck don't lie. We go to 8 rounds of the shootout, and Nazem Kadri, the 34-year-old coming off the career season, gets the shootout winner. And how about this for your stat of the night, Alex Wiederspiel? Because it's the second time ever in the 45-year history of the Battle of Alberta, the illustrious history of this rivalry, that a team comes back from 3-0 down to win the hockey game. I mean, I don't know if you're making statements this early in the season, but that's got to feel like a nice win for these Flames.
Yes, I think more importantly, it's going to feel like a nice win for Dustin Wolf, because again, you just went over those 3 goals. Could not pick 3 weirder ways to score. Honestly, the Stuart Skinner goal, that was the least weird of the 3 because we've seen Stu do it before. But
that's true.
When you combine all 3, like, how do you think Natural Stat Trick is measuring expected goals on those 3 goals tonight? I'm sure the second one is the easiest to measure, but those were pretty weird. And I think you look at Edmonton, a kind of a classic night for them where they reminded me of like the post-Cup Penguins, but before Mike Sullivan had gotten there, where it's you got your superstars, and then who are these guys? A bunch of who are these guys? Like what's the old joke? Like Brad Donk and right.
Yeah.
Like that's what it felt like for Edmonton tonight. With how many injuries they've got throughout the lineup. The Jake Wallman, who they just threw $7 million a year at, not in the lineup tonight. Obviously Zach Hyman, not in the lineup right now. So they're dealing with couple of 20-year-olds in the lineup for Edmonton. And I do think there were parts tonight where it actually did kind of look at Edmonton got off to that really fast start, man. But as the game wore on, they looked less composed, which is kind of shocking from a McDavid and Draisaitl-led team.
Let's hear from the Edmonton side of things, shall we? Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers breaking down a heartbreaker early in the season.
Are no easy victories in the National Hockey League. Nick Zararis of Locked On Oilers here after a deflating shootout loss at the hands of the Calgary Flames in a game that the Oilers controlled, I would say, for 45 of the 60 minutes of regulation. They looked great, multiple chances to win the game on the power play in the overtime period. 8 rounds of a shootout, only Leon Draisaitl able to get one past Dustin Wolf, Nazem Kadri also ultimately sealing it in the shootout period, but it's one game. That said, the Oilers left a lot of meat on the bone. As good as I think Dustin Wolf is, and kudos to the Flames and their young netminder, he is every bit as good as advertised. He kept the Flames in this game. Quite a few really high-quality saves on chances from Draisaitl, from McDavid, and things looked reasonably good for the Oilers, but this is a game where you lost focus for one period, and that ultimately swung this game. Unsatisfying. The Oilers are back at it Saturday night, Hockey Night in Canada, against the Vancouver Canucks.
There we go. Mike muted. Speaking of Hockey Night in Canada, let's go to the first end of that, which was the classic rivalry, Toronto, Montreal, starting in Toronto in this one. And it started pretty quickly. How about Bobby McCann opening the scoring exactly 1 minute into the Leaf season? A tip on Wee Willie Nylander's shot. But then 4 minutes later, here come the Habs. Oliver Kapanen shorthanded off a sloppy play by Nylander and just a flyby by Austin Matthews. Not really sure what he's going for there.
By the way, great response by Montreal because they looked like they could have gotten run out of the building in those first 5 minutes. This settled them down.
Yeah, Oliver Kapanen comes in, shorthanded goal, a little partial breakaway, first career goal for him. They actually end up taking a lead 2-1, a minute and a half into the second. That was Zachary Balduke who scored. Balduke. Yeah, we'll figure it out at some point. But then it's Calle Jarnkrok 4 minutes later that is going to answer the thing, tie it at 2. And from there, it's really all Leafs. And we see that part of Montreal that just hasn't quite gotten there yet. It was Michelli to Matthew Nyes, denied by Montembeault, and then Nyes turnaround, quick pass, Morgan Rielly for the goal, 3-2 Toronto. They ended up putting in a couple of empty netters to win this one 5-2. Look, it's game one. I don't want to get too bogged down into this, Alex, but it does feel like we saw a bit of that inexperience that we didn't quite hear about when Montreal was hyped up so much this summer.
Okay, well, look, here's the deal, though. Pound for pound, I don't know that there's a more interesting team right now than the Montreal Canadiens, and I plan on watching as many Canadian games this year as I possibly can because they're young, they're fun, but you know what that means? They're fun for you and I to watch. They're not going to be a lot of fun for Canadian fans because they're going to be playing a lot of games like this. This is one of the youngest blue lines and one of the youngest teams in all of the NHL, and I think structurally speaking, that's something that we're kind of seeing. And, you know, this is something that Ottawa dealt with a couple of years ago. This is something the Rangers dealt with in their final year with David Quinn as the head coach. One of the hardest things to do. And yes, I get it. Montreal made the playoffs last year, but just keep in mind that was kind of a weaker East. Right now, things look like there's going to be a little more competitive. So they've got to go up against a little bit more. That's not going to be a turtle derby to the final playoff spot. I would say it's hard for the head coach who was in charge of the rebuild. It's really hard for them to get the young players to buy in defensively, which is why Ottawa has a new head coach. It's why New York has multiple new head coaches since David Quinn. That's the hardest part, and I think we saw that tonight. And this is, I think Martin St. Louis did a phenomenal job coming in under crazy circumstances in Montreal, but I am going to be watching his job very, very closely because the Canadiens have got to play some defense to protect his job.
Yeah, and you're right. It's fun for us. They've got so much offensive upside. And even though they gave up 3 with a goalie in the net and lost to one of their biggest rivals, Laura Saba of Locked On Canadiens saying there's a lot of positives to take from this one.
Sound like copium, but I promise you it's not. Hi everyone, my name is Laura Saba. I'm from the Locked On Canadiens podcast, and the Habs lost, but they still gave us so many reasons to smile. When was the last time we saw the Montreal Canadiens play that well, legitimately that well, against Toronto in that opening night that we're used to, right? The PK was the first thing that stood out to me. The aggressiveness of the penalty kill was the first thing that stood out to me. Another thing, it felt like the top line wasn't even trying and skating circles and causing high danger chances. There's so much that I can say, right? Obviously, there's a lot of things we're going to need to tighten up. There were some mistakes that led to goals. There was some bad luck that led to goals against. And so the Montreal Canadiens really, I think with an encouraging first game, Zach Bolduc, welcome to the Montreal Canadiens. Oliver Kapanen with his first goal being a shorthanded one. That's quite cool, actually. And there's so much more to talk about, but I just really wanted to emphasize that this is the strongest we've seen the Montreal Canadiens play in an opening night against a team like Toronto in a very, very long time. All things that they can build on. And for more, please check out Locked On Canadiens.
And you can hear her, Laura Saba, with Ian Boisvert on Locked On Canadiens every day, of course, on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well, just like all our great hosts on this channel. We've got one more game left, and the Boston Bruins are just happy they have David Pastrnak at this point. We'll take you to Pasta's big night in DC in a surprising Game 1 victory for the Bees. That's coming up next on Locked On NHL Game Night. Don't know if we can call anything an upset in the NHL, Alex Wiederspiel. It's the NHL. But I was surprised, okay, to see the Bruins really take control of this game against Washington, and they still got outshot 2-1. But you got great play from Jeremy Swayman, and you got a whole lot of David Pastrnak in this one. So it's scoreless throughout the first half of the game. Pastrnak finds this seeing eye shot to go up 1-0. I'm still not really sure how it went in. And they're up 1-0 at the end of 2, even though they're being outshot 25-10. 7:03 of the third, Tom Wilson with a bouncing, rolling puck that he just pounds into the net, makes it 1-1, and then Pastrnak takes over again. Bruins power play, absolutely sick. Hard pass to Elias Lindholm, who goes forehand, backhand, goal. Pastrnak then assists to Morgan Geekie on the empty net. 3-point night for David Pastrnak, who at the time took over for the league lead in points from Justin Brazeau, as we all had it after opening night. That was before Pavel Dorofeyev and Jack Eichel did their thing out west. But the Bruins kill 5 penalties in this game, and that really becomes the difference. Let's hear from Ian McLaren, the Locked On Bruins host, about what went right for the Bees.
Welcome to the Marco Sturm era, Boston Bruins fans. This is Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins. And with a 3-1 win over the Washington Capitals, the new head coach is off to a fantastic start. Bruins are kind of what we thought they would be. Jeremy Swayman was stellar in net. The first line provided all the scoring, with goals coming from David Pastrnak, Elias Lindholm, and Morgan Geekie. And a renewed emphasis on team defense and special teams really powered the Bruins to a win in Sturm's head coaching debut. It's not going to be super entertaining. It's not going to be always pretty, but the Bruins were harder to play against, as they've been preaching. And this team is off to a 1-0 start. Will goals come from elsewhere in the lineup? Who knows? But for right now, it was enough to get one from each of those 3 guys, and a fantastic performance from Jeremy Swayman.
A lot of optimism from Ian McLaren on his side of things for the Bruins. Let's hear from Dan Holmie of Locked On Capitals for the team that finished first in the Eastern Conference last year.
The Capitals dropped the season opener to the Bruins by a score of 3-1. Hi, this is Dan Holmie of Locked On Capitals. Well, the story of this game was the Capitals' inability to generate offense. Only Tom Wilson found the back of the net. Special teams was a glaring weakness, more specifically the power play, managing just 11 shots on 5 opportunities, including an extended 5-on-3. A bit of a change. You're seeing more limited usage by Alex Ovechkin on the power play. The penalty kill did not fare any better. The Capitals struggled with clean entries and breakouts. All things that they're going to need to clean up if they want to win hockey games. Spencer Carberry talked about it before the game, that the Capitals are going to need to work on special teams, more specifically the power play. We'll need to see a whole lot more of that in the next game. I'll have much more on this for you later on Locked On Caps.
Alex, I'll just call a spade a spade. Okay, this Bruins team does not have a lot of offensive talent. Really, it's David Pastrnak and everybody else. And that was evidenced last year. I mean, Pastrnak, another 100-point season, but 49 points ahead of the number 2 scorer for the Bruins. This team just doesn't have a lot of goal scoring, goal creating, but this could be how they win hockey games.
Yes, and it actually reminds me a little bit if you go back and look at the Marian Gaborik pre-Rick Nash era Rangers, where Gaborik is just every night having to carry the Rangers offense in the John Tortorella era. That's kind of what this reminds me of, at least in the early stages here. But here's the thing: I mean, Jeremy Swayman, hard not to think that after the way he started tonight, that he's not back, man. I thought last year I was pretty confident that he was going to struggle after the holdout. I think it's really, really tough for goaltenders to miss that amount of time. And I had a sneaking suspicion he was going to be locked in. And he very much was in this one. And so this is your formula, right? If David Pastrnak is playing like that, and I think there are going to be a lot of nights where David Pastrnak looks like that. And if Jeremy Swayman looks like this 40 to 50 nights a year, he may not win all of those, but I think the Bruins are going to be feisty. I don't know that they're necessarily a playoff team in probably the second best division in the NHL, but they're going to be feisty, and I think they might have taken the Caps by surprise a little bit this evening.
So are you taking them out of the Gavin McKenna race, game 1?
Well, I mean, you just got to finish
Please
in
don't.
mathematically. You just got to finish in the bottom 11. Hey,
that's true, man.
New York Islanders were number 10, right?
I was gonna say we were doing games on game night last year, end of the regular season, being like last week of the regular season, and being like, well, I guess the Islanders are out of the playoff picture now. And a month later, they're winning the lottery and picking number 1. So yeah, nobody is trading those picks for the 2026 first round, just to see if they can get the Penn State Nittany Lion in Gavin McKenna. Well, that was the night that was in the NHL. We had some wackiness out west. We had some good quality defensive hockey out east, especially in that Bruins Caps game. 4 games in the books. Everyone's playing on opening night, and that just sets the table for a feast tomorrow. 14 games on the schedule on Thursday. Eddie Garcia and Shukri Wrights will team up together for the first time this season on that Locked On NHL Game Night episode. So guys, be sure, if you want to know what happens in the NHL, we are the place to be right here. If you don't want to know, I don't know what you're still doing here. But if you want to know, Locked On NHL Game Night gives you the details, the scores, the analysis, and we hear from our local hosts after every night that they are playing hockey in this great league. For Alex Wiederspiel, I'm Cam Stuart. Guys, be sure to leave a comment. Be sure to like and subscribe. Help out this channel. What was your highlight of the night? Give us your 3 stars of the night. Let us know in the comment section below. And our team will see you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On NHL Game Night.